Good morning everybody, welcome to Railway Cottage Studio. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to show you how to create some aged quilt blocks. I had lots of people commenting about, being grateful because I was doing videos about using things around the house, and beautiful old quilt blocks are one of the things that it's very, very hard to get when you live in, Chateau Bundaberg rather than Chateau Lafitte. So there's some really easy ways to make some quick quilt blocks, even if you're not a quilter. I actually did a really good, well, I can say really good because it now doesn't exist, really good video on making this yesterday, and then I realised that I had A, set the camera to slow motion, and B, taken the sound off somehow, so unfortunately that's not going to see the light of day. But I'm going to show you a really simple way to create a quilt block like this, which means you don't have to be a quilter, using this visor fix stuff from Spotlight. Okay, so I will do that. I've done that in a photo series this morning, where you literally, it is so simple, you literally get some of this stuff which is glue on one side, smooth on the other, and it's iron on. Cut yourself, I've made this now, it took me about 15 minutes. Cut yourself some squares of fabric, you just put them on side by side and align them. Then you turn it over, iron them on, they don't move. Then you simply go to your machine, fold, so all the way one way on each seam, do that all the way one way, and you do a little tiny snip in each of those joints, go back and sew the other way, and in hey presto, you've got a little quilt block. This is one that I've done to sew onto my Gathered Things Roxy's Volume 8 quilt. But I put it on and then it's too new looking, so I'm going to age that down a little bit. But I thought while I'm at it, I'll show you how to do it, and I'll create this quilt block and do it with this, so I can actually use this as well in another project. I did this one yesterday, and you don't need a lot of stuff. You don't need a lot of expensive stuff. I have got a sanding block from Bunnings, actually it's from my husband's tool shed, some sandpaper, also from my husband's tool shed. I have a steak knife, a little pair of snippy scissors, and then a bit of tea dye in a bowl. I'm just going to get one more thing. I use a little acrylic square. Now, this is just what I use. You'll see what I use it for in a minute. You don't need this, but you need something that's hard and has a good edge and a corner, and you'll see why. So we're going to, first of all, find a towel so I don't make a massive mess everywhere. We're going to just pop this underneath so I can absorb anything, and I'm going to make it and it's going to be done, so we're not going to muck around. I quite like sanding and working with wet fabric. It seems to sand really well and it gives me some really good holes and things. And then we're going to talk about how to make it look aged with stuff you have at home. I made this yesterday at the same time, so I'll show you how to do that. Easy. So first thing I'm going to do is get some tea dye into action. This is my my rag that just keeps giving. I just keep cutting bits off. So we're going to blot. We're going to do a bit of blotting. A bit of blotting first. So this is just cold tea dye. I made it yesterday for some project I was doing and just left it sit. I did notice that my golden retriever was trying to drink it. What do you do? So I have had to put it up out of her reach. The only difference between this quilt block and this one is on this one I put a bit of backing fabric on. I used a little bit of spray adhesive. I just get this one. It's cheaper than the quilter's one. It's about $35, the quilter's one. This is about $16. They're exactly the same, particularly for this sort of stuff. It's completely fine. But do use it outdoors. It is horrible to spray that indoors. And all I've done is put a bit of backing on it, and I've just used my sewing machine and I've stitched, oh I missed one there, missed that seam, stitched along the seams except for that one. Won't matter because that will be the fold. And the idea is that this will be big enough to make a little book when I've finished. Or a little zipper pouch or something like that. Lots of things you can do with it. So first thing I'm going to do with both of these is do a bit of blotting. I just cut a rag. What did I do with it? I wonder. Is it under there? Here it is. So I'm just going to blot. Look, you could soak, but because this has already got the wadding in it, I don't want to wait for it necessarily today. So we're just going to do a bit of a blot, bring the colours down straight away, and kind of just do it all over. Some of these fabrics, all of these fabrics are just from my little scrap basket, offcuts that are, you know, still a decent size, and I just cut them all to 2.5 inches. And look, I wasn't that worried because this project is for an old quilt block. I really didn't try very hard to make them straight. I kind of wanted them a bit wonky, so that actually is very easy for me to make them wonky. This is actually coming off. Let me just grab something else to use. I might just use a bit of wadding actually. Will that work? As a little sponge. Yes, it will. Alright, that's better. I'm just going to blot and just push it down into that the threads. Blot, blot, blot. And I think this tea dye, look, I just made it. I boiled the kettle and I think I put half a dozen tea bags in. It was probably about, I don't know, a quarter full. But obviously it depends how dark you want your tea dye. And if I wanted this really dark, you could leave it in there overnight. But I'll be doing other things to age it down as well. So some of these fabrics are new, some of them are vintage. It's just a real mixture. And I've just kept to those blues and soft reds. So again, if you are trying to make something look old, don't necessarily use modern fabrics. They're very hard to, you know, if it's got a modern pattern, that's going to make it difficult to make it look old. So anything that's floral or ticking or toile, you're generally pretty safe. Any of the reproduction fabrics. But if you're kind of going for that French old look, then florals, tickings and toiles are your fabrics of choice. Alright, so I'm going to do both sides while I'm at it. Can't believe I missed a whole row of stitching. And again, I could just dip it, I just don't want to soak it because I want to pretty much use it today. And another part of the aging process is I will chuck it in the dryer for just maybe 10 minutes, and that'll also beat it up a little bit more. Ooh, some of the blues running, that's alright. We quite like it when the colours run on this in this project. Alright, so that has just brought that down a little bit on the back. Except that bit which won't go. Too easy. So I'm going to do this one later. We'll just work on this one for you. Alright, you can see here this is quite a coarse fabric, so I'm just going to put a bit more on there. Okay, so my fabric's damp. It's not soaking, it's damp. So what we're going to do now is beat it up a bit. So these sanding blocks come in different grades, you know, so you need one that's fairly coarse. The thing is, it does kind of drop little dots all over the place, so, you know, be ready for that. And I find the best way is to bend it over something, hence the little block. So I'm just going to create a hard line and tack it with my sanding block. Now I'm trying to take layers of fabric off, layers of colour. And you can see when you have that hard line, it makes it so much easier to sand. So then put your little block in a different order. Where the corner is great for getting a hole because it will just go all the way down for you, all the way through. Yes, it is dropping black stuff, but it does that. It all comes off when we're at the end. So I'm going to just do a bit of sanding here and there. Sorry if I'm going to be shaking the table. I'll grab a bit of this sandpaper. So again, this isn't a very coarse sandpaper. You want to have different levels of sanding and distress, like a real old piece of fabric wood that's been folded. Maybe it's been sat in the light. Might be exposed to the sun sometimes. You can can do both sides of this little guy or just one. So I'm trying not to make the table rock. Just using the corner of that acrylic block to give me a really good edge to sand. Alright, you can see how that's just created that line across there. That's awesome. I think I need to update my block though. So let's go in a different direction up here. And it's all about experimentation, what fabrics you're using. Sorry, I'm shaking you again. About how they respond to the sanding. And you kind of want to make sure you have a crack at the seams as well. Because like, you know, old items, the seams are worn, are a bit torn. So I'm going to put the seam right on the corner. And beat it up a bit. Let's go across here. Again, depending on the fabric and whether it's yarn dyed, whether it's screen printed, the quality of the fabric, how things will respond to you. Sorry. And obviously the level of distress that you want is completely up to you. I'm going to give this a fair bit of distressing. So you can see how that's already looking beat up. Let's just put this one here. Oops. And again, really focusing on some seams. Excellent. That's good. You can see I've got some black dots there off my sanding block, but they'll come off when it's dry. Let's give this bit of ticking. It's obviously got some sort of, and it's a new ticking, I think it's just a spotlight one. It's got some sort of like a sizing on it maybe, where the water's not being absorbed. I'm going to have to be quite brutal with that one. Ooh, it's not wanting to. Again. Oopsie daisy. So this is a bit of a process, so just bear with me. And obviously the bigger the block, the longer it's going to take. Alrighty, let me just give that a shake. Let's see where we're up to. Alright, so we've got lots of wear here. I'm going to get into it now with some of my sharper implements. I'm just going to grab a little board to go under, like this. I'm going to use a few things. So the steak knife. Steak knife is really useful because of the different serrated bits on it. You can use it to cut. I'm kind of just going with the grain, and because it's wet, it will tear, which is exactly what I want. And it kind of just roughs up the surface and gives it that aged look. And again, this is purely a matter of taste. I think what I'm going, you can see I've pulled that out there, but that's all right because that will be tea dyed underneath. And just like an old quilt would have some bits hanging off, I'm going for sophisticated dilapidation. Ooh, some of these fabrics colours have run, that's great. Let's go this way. Alright, you still with me? This guy's looking far too new here. So I'm just buffing up the surface. Alright, Mr. Ticking, your time has come. There we go, it's much better. Just don't cut yourself like I just did. Trust me, trust me, trust me. If you're going, oh my God, what is she doing? Trust me, trust me. Okay, where have I missed here? Just a bit gently. I'm going to just do a couple of the seams, particularly the corner joints there. Alright, how's that looking, everybody? If you're still with me, then you like it. Hang on, let's have a drink. So you can see here, this is lifted, and you can see the white underneath. When I've completed this, I'm going to dip the whole thing, so you won't see any of that. But before we do that, we're going to add now a couple of other elements to make the aging process look even better. So the first thing I'm doing is a bit of stamping. Now this again is completely a personal preference. I have a couple of stamps here that are stays on. They're both the same colour. One's just newer than the other. I have some stamps. Some big stamps is what I'm going for, because you're not going to get an image, clear image in these. You're going to get the impression of an image is what I'm going for. So these are stamps I picked up at an auction. They're big road stamps. So I've got a spare piece of paper, and the colour that I have for my stays on is called Ganache. So let's just have a check on the paper, just which one this is. One's new, one's old. Okay, I think that's the new one. Let's check with a different one, because each of them are going to give me a different effect. Okay, that's the old one. So you can see these just create a large round stamp with the number. So I'm going to do a bit of stamping on the back to show you. The colour has leached through here. That's good. That's what we want. I'm actually going to start with just this ink that's left on here, and it's wet, so it's going to possibly bleed a little bit. So we'll test it. We'll do one here, when it's a couple here when it's wet, and then when it's dry, we'll try another one over here. Oh, look at that. Didn't have any ink on it at all, Karen. That's a bit of a failure. Let's try it again. Cool. So again, when we tea dye this further, it will dye these out a little bit. Yeah, perfect. See how it's just given the impression there? I'm going to do one of the smaller ones. And where's my odd shape one there? Right, so I wanted smudgy, faded, been washed a million times. Look. Okay, so that stays on. Look, it's going nowhere. And then back on this side, haha, it's looking lovely and old now. On this side, let's have a look at a few other things. Now, you may or may not have these things at home. You don't need them. These are just lovely little additions if you can do them. I've just got some watercolour pencils. So we're going to go in with a bit of brown and a bit of white, just to add a bit of additional dirt, just like that. These dissolve in water. Just going to grab my little water jar. Just got some water here and a little brush, just in case I get a bit excited, which I often do, just to help blend them in. So this is just a brown water-based pencil. And again, I think Chateau Bundaberg, not Chateau Lafitte. Very similar though. So these pencils are actually permanent. So once they dry, they'll set. So as far as now, you know, when I go and re-tea dye this, these will be set. They won't change from what they are. So once I've blended them and put them on, that's how they will be. So going for those areas that would scuff, like a, see here's a bit dry, so I'm actually going to put a bit of water here. Jeez, it's really water resistant, this one. Just going to sort him out a bit in the corner there. So again, this is just a matter of personal preference about how dirty, let me zoom in a little bit for you, how dirty you want it. Let's get myself all in frame. Is it? Where do I want to go? Over here a bit. So again, if your thread's looking too white, or you know, sometimes depending on the thread you use, if it's, you know, if it's not a cotton, if it's got a bit of polyester, it might struggle taking up the tea dye. You can just colour it out like that, and then I'm just going to push that into it with my water just to make it colour that thread. I don't want white thread. What old piece of fabric has perfectly white thread? Nothing. And again through here, and you can see, like, literally not a lot of skill required. It's just being brave and having a try at something different. And you know what, I've done some of these that didn't turn out how I like them, and it's just about learning about what you like. And my issue is stopping. Look how good that looks. Because I get a bit carried away. And this has worked really well because some of these fabrics look more faded than others. I need to make this one a bit. We don't want them all even toned. That's not what you see in an old piece of fabric. All right, how are we looking? I need a bit of brown just up here, I think. Oops. So we're nearly done. We are nearly finished. Okay, so the next little job I'm going to do is put some white on. And the white, I guess, is just, imagine fading, you know, a bit of sun. I'll show you how it works here, for example. Look. It kind of also looks like a bit of wear, like it's worn through. See the difference that makes there? So I found the white's actually really effective. So it's just about, again, your own level of distressedness, if that's a word. Again, these are water pencils, so they go on better if it's wet. You can use them either way, but I find if it's wet and then I use a little bit of water, then they blend and you can't really see that it's just been me with a dodgy pencil. I'm going to go here. And here. I mean, if you wanted to put paint splatters, depends what you wanted to do. I mean, you could go the whole Magnolia Pearl thing and go a bit cray-cray, but I'm just after left on a chair in the chateau kind of look, in the sun, folded up. The paintbrush I'm using are literally from Kmart. I just bought a packet. Again, I'm not an artist by any stretch of the imagination. Now see here, I've got a hole, so I'm kind of going to just find this looks really good around, like a raggedy hole, like that. Oh, love it. And this is just playing, like just play, you know, just have some fun and relax. It's a piece of fabric. If you don't like it, put it down to learning. Alright, I'm very nearly finished. Then I'm going to say goodbye for a minute, and I'm going to go and put this in my, actually I'm going to dip the whole thing first. Okay, I feel like I just need a bit more white here, and probably quickly here. And I feel like we are done. All right, so the next stage is I'm going to just dip the whole thing in my little bowl of tea dye. In fact, I can do that with you. Okay, that's looking great. So I've got some loose bits, like some of them have come up loose. That's okay, that's what we're after. You know, if you wanted to patch them, once you've finished, if you wanted to use a thread, I mean, even now you could sew that down. Let's do that. Let's do a bit of an experiment. So let's say I get a thread. Let's do a bit of visible mending as if this has, you know, been a piece of something that's been loved and fixed once it had a tear in it, you know, with beautiful old stitching. So this is just a cotton thread, so it will absorb whatever I need it to absorb. So I'm just going to go in on this side, and we're just going to do some, oops, lost my thread on the way, literally. I'm just going to do a bit of stitching. Actually, I might do a few little bits, and then we'll tea dye it with the stitching in. Go through there, you bugger. This is fun. I haven't done this bit before, so this will be interesting to see how this turns out. Let's do some mending in the chateau. I'm going to go all the way through. Pretend the person wasn't very good at sewing. I'm just going to do a little whip stitch. I'm just going to go up about 2/3 of the way. I do feel I should have made these a bit closer together, but that's okay. I can come back and stitch a few. Again, if you're using a thread here and you haven't tea dyed it yet and you want to tea dye, just make sure you're using a cotton thread, or even probably a linen thread, because at least they will absorb and it can look nice and shiny against all of your other, you know, very carefully crafted old stuff. Geez, that doesn't want to go through there. I'm just doing a few dodgy little stitches. Goodness, it's wet and it's a seam. Oh, be careful working with wet fabric. You've got to push really hard to get through. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I'm just going to leave that like that. Actually, I'm going to tie it off visibly. Make it a little bit puckered. And again, this is going to go into the dryer in a minute, so I'm just going to make sure that is tied off. Alright, so I've got one little bunch of stitching there. I'm going to do some other random stitching. Let's have a look. Where else have I made a hole? I'm looking for a hole just so I can get my needle in with a notch in the end, but I don't think it matters actually. Let's go in here. Looking for the most impact, so I'm going to go out on the red here and just do a couple of stitches. Oh, here comes someone. Okay. good. Again, this is just completely, you know, completely your own taste. But if you look at the old pieces, I'm just going to cut that like that. The old pieces of fabric, there's usually some repairs somewhere. I'm just going to stitch this little guy down just because I don't want to completely lose him. Oh, go through there, you. I need to sharpen my needles after this. I'm just going to do a couple of crosses down in this corner. A couple of little stitches first. Oh, go through. Again, you need a strong needle for this because it is tough when it's wet. All the fabric fibres shrink, tighten up. They're not happy. So these stitches are doing two jobs. This is kind of keeping it together. I don't want it to be completely destroyed for the next stage, which will be in the tumble dryer. And also giving a bit of more decorative, beaten up charm. I don't think that's coming out anytime soon, so I'm just going to pull it out there and cut it. And then I might just do something on the blue up here, just because the blue is big and blue, very, very blue. Let's just see. So I'm just going to go up under here. Oops. Oh, this needle, seriously. Under here and do a couple of little crosses, I think. A couple little random stitches. And obviously you can do more of this decorative stitch, this kind of beaten up stitch afterwards. But these are the ones that I kind of wanted to be part of the original piece. And I want to see how they dye because I haven't tea dyed it with the stitching before. Okay, so you see here I've got a bit of this bit's a bit loose. I'm just going to do a whip stitch around the corner with my last little bit of thread. Oh my goodness, okay, let me just go through this guy first. Now I do not want to pull my thread out of my needle. So literally a couple of little stitches over the seam. Just going to do that slowly so I don't lose him. That looks great. All right, I'm going to leave him at that. Let's have a look. Let's move all this out of the way. Just drop my pencil. So here it is. This bit is finished. I'm not going to stamp on the front just yet. I'm going to leave it like this. I'm going to go and stick that in the dryer for maybe 10 minutes. And actually I'm going to dip it again first, aren't I? Let's do that together. This will use the last of my tea dye up. So I'm just going to literally dip her away in here, and there's a little bit of fluff in here from my rags, but that will just come off in the dryer. It's good. I'm going to make sure the edges are done, dip it like a lemington, squeeze her out so it goes all through. And a key to this too, if you were drying this outside, I would dry it in a ball like that, because then it's going to get all the different, there's probably more tea dye is going to settle in the bits that are folded. Haha, look at that. So you can have a look at how that stamps when we get to the next bit. Just checking that all my edges are a bit lovely. Let's dip them like it's a margarita glass. again, let's give it a big squeeze. Also just make sure it goes through everything. Let's just check, you can see the pencil's held up. Look how fabulous that is. Right, I'm going to go pop that in the dryer for 10 minutes, so I will come back and show you when it's done. Thank you so much for coming along on the journey. See you in a minute.